long embrace. A fond farewell should be personal. That's why Perslow Funerals allow you to remember the life of your loved ones in a way that truly reflects their individual character. It's the difference that makes every goodbye unique. For more information about planning a special goodbye, visit perslowfunerals.com.au, because every goodbye is different.
This is the Sattler Files.
You're with the Sattler Files. My name is Murray Corf, and joining me is Daniel McKeag from Perslow Funerals. G'day, Daniel.
Good morning, Murray.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. We're going to talk, this is a segment we call Lifting the Lid, and it's all about demystifying the funeral process and also some of the options and some of the things that people can do about pre-planning their funeral and ensuring it and all sorts of things, aren't there?
Look, there's plenty of variables now when it comes to what you can do when it comes to pre-planning and also prepaying for your funeral service.
Yeah.
It's some of the things that you'll see consistently bombarding you on the TV, obviously, if you watch any daytime TV, is the amount of funeral insurance ads that are being replayed over and over and over again.
Yeah. What exactly is funeral insurance? How does that work?
Well, funeral insurance is obviously a product that's put together by a myriad of insurance companies. And you really need to be careful as to what you're signing up for. It all looks good. You get a free cup of coffee a day, or you get a free TV, or it's the cost of $3 a day. But you really have to do your math.
Yeah.
You know, if you're taking out funeral insurance, for instance, just as you retire, and you've got funeral insurance for 10, 20 years, you're going to be paying far more for a funeral service than going to your local funeral director or guardian funeral plan operator to be able to make sure that your funeral's paid for if you pay it off over a period of time with the funeral director. So
this works in much the same way as most insurance policies do, and that is that you pay the premium and until such times as you make a claim, basically. So if you were to retire and you unfortunately passed in the first month, your funeral would cost you 1 month's premium, basically. Is that the way that works?
I think there's most insurance companies would have an indemnity that you've got to be paying for 12 months or so, like a little bit like your health insurance.
Well, quite right. Yeah, that's exactly the same thing. But but by the same token, you could also be paying it for 25 years.
And that's where
the problem is.
That's where the problem is. And we've over the last few years, I think since probably around 2010, 2011, we've been working with the ACCC, having a look at some of the rogue insurance operators that have been out there. And we've had instances where families have come to us and told us that they've paid in excess of, 5, 6, 10 times the cost of a funeral.
Is that right?
When they've actually been paying for insurance for a period of time. The ACCC's cracked down a little bit from what I can understand on the major funeral insurance providers. But to me, it's still, personally, I feel it's still a little bit of a scam. They've put in some caps now. So if you get to 90 and you've been paying your insurance for a period of time, then you'll never have to pay any further premiums, or if you get to certain levels of payments that you've made. But all in all, you still find that you're paying well in excess of what a normal funeral service would cost.
Yes.
And you don't take into account inflation.
No.
So you take out a $5,000 funeral insurance policy now, and the price of funerals goes up every year. You don't bump up your $5,000 funeral insurance policy, and you get to the end of it, and the $5,000 that you're getting paid is only worth half of what the funeral might be.
Yeah. Okay.
So to us, and what we've done a lot of research and investigation with regards to this. The best method is to be able to contact a reputable funeral director, work out exactly what you want for your funeral service, so you know what you're actually paying for, and you've got options of being able to pay it all in one lump sum or paying it off over a period of a few years to the funeral director. But one of the things you do need to be careful of if you're dealing with your funeral directors is that you're dealing with somebody who's very reputable. There's no real regulation in Western Australia as to how that money is meant to be invested or where it's meant to be put, and those type of things. So what we do is we, as a funeral company, we benchmark ourselves against the laws of the highest part of the country.
Okay.
So that we make sure that that money is invested away at arm's length, so that we can't touch it until we've proven that we've actually provided the funeral service for the client.
Okay.
So the client's money is always the client's money. And if anything were to ever to happen to us, which I'd very much doubt, but if anything was to ever happen to us, the client's money is still theirs. And we do that currently by investing the money with the Over 50s Friendly Society. And the After 50s Friendly Society manage those funds.
Okay.
And we would hope that those funds would keep up with inflation as it goes, but we take that risk away. So
it certainly sounds a much more useful way of doing things than an insurance policy, in the sense that you insure your funeral for a certain amount, don't you? Is that the way that it works?
That's the way that it works.
So
you can
basically, you go say, well, I think I'll probably spend $8,000, say, for the sake of argument. So you only insure it for $8,000, and then come the time that you have to draw on that, you still only got $8,000, and it might not be worth $8,000 by the time you come to draw down on it.
Historically, funerals in Western Australia have doubled in price every 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's governed by a lot of things.
Sure it is.
It's governed by the cemetery fees, the cost of ministers or celebrants, the press notices that you put in the paper.
Yeah. Yep.
All of those type of things go up, and they go up considerably. And, some years they might go up a small portion, and in other years they might go up quite a lot.
Yeah.
So if you worked on the fact that if you knew you were thinking that you were going to have 10 years to live, and you took out an insurance policy for your $10,000, you would be wanting to up that to $20,000 in 10 years' time.
Of course you would.
And look, they're not true figures, but
no, it's an illustration of what can happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot. People also seem to think that mum or dad have got their insurance policy, but the way that the premiums have gone up, they might have had to cancel it because they can't afford the power or the water bill, and those type of things. And if you're on a pension, that's a huge amount that you're paying out to some of these insurance companies as the prices start to increase as you get older.
It is indeed, isn't it? Yes. So if somebody comes along to you and says to you, look, we really want to prepay our funeral, does Perslow go through what they want in terms of a funeral and then say, well, look, on today's money, that's what it's going to cost?
That's exactly how it works.
Yeah. What
we do is we sit down and we ascertain everything from burial to cremation, choice of coffin or casket, the flowers that you may even want for your funeral service, the music, all of those type of things can all be pre-planned, and they can be changed as they go along.
Yeah.
So if your favourite song you no longer like anymore, you're not loved with it. You can
actually do that, yeah.
So you can actually update all of those things. But what we do is we ascertain what the funeral's going to cost at today's price, and then there's no further increases whatsoever. So it could be 50 years down the track. And with today's modern technology, the chances are it could be 50 years down the track.
That's right.
But you would never pay an increase in price. No. And we guarantee that.
Yeah.
We've had to do funerals in the past that were taken out many, many years ago, where people have had prepaid funerals for a long period of time, where they actually cost us money to do.
Yeah.
But that's our service to the community.
Yeah.
That's our way of being able to allow people to come together, talk about with their family what they want when something does happen. It's inevitable, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to be able to, take the pressure and ease off the family of making those choices when the time comes.
Yeah.
And the financial commitment as well.
Well, that's right, because, a lot of people don't have a lot of money. I mean, it's all very well if there's an estate of some substance, but so many people just don't have that these days. No. And to put that burden on the family is perhaps something that you'd try and avoid if you possibly could, and prepaying is the way to go.
And look, the person might have a sizable estate even, but the children might not have any money, for instance.
That's right, yeah.
And therefore what's happening is the estate goes into hold while you're going through all the legal ramifications that are required, and you might not have access to that money to be able to pay for the funeral service.
Indeed.
And there's a lot that we pay out for you on your behalf on the day of the funeral. And as with all funeral providers, we'd require a deposit to be able to cover some of those
certain
costs.
Things. Yes, yeah. Look, it's something that a lot of people, probably shy away from because they don't even want to talk about death, and they don't want to talk about that sort of thing because it upsets them at the thought of losing a loved one or anything like that. But there's a certain practicality that has to be taken into account in all of this, isn't there? It just is.
Look, given 15 years ago, and even some ethnicities, even still to this day don't like to talk about it too much. But if you go back 15 years ago, it was never really talked about. And I think we've done pretty well about trying to educate the community as to what the requirements are and get people talking about it. It's not a difficult conversation to have if it's around the dinner table.
No.
You're saying, well, when I go, I want cremation, boys. And, therefore at least you've got one of the hurdles out of the way.
Quite right.
And the amount of times I've heard, look, just bury me in a cardboard box. Well, if that's what you want, you can tell us and we can organise that.
That's right. Yeah. We're talking with Daniel McKeag from Perslow Funerals, and our segment is called Lifting the Lid, and we talk about all things related to funerals and dying and all of that sort of thing. Daniel, a lot of people would feel, and I know you've covered this, but when you pay money to somebody, it is important that they feel quite comfortable that money is safe, and you've gone through the fact that where you invest the money and so on. So people don't have to worry about that, do they?
They don't. They just need to be able to, as with all financial decisions, get some advice. Make sure that who you're choosing as a funeral provider, has some length of tenure is always a good thing to be able to have a look at.
Quite so.
If we have a look at, say, Perslow Funerals, for instance, we've been around for well over 100 years now. And it's a strong and successful traditional funeral company. But we've got a very good, strong contemporary feel. But we also benchmark ourselves against the best funeral companies in Australia and across the world, and we strive for excellence. So by making sure that families feel comfortable in instances, whether it be pre-planning or an at-need funeral when somebody passes away immediately and can call us for advice at no cost even, to be able to say, what do I do and how do I do it and what's the next steps from here, and then make an informed decision as to where they go or what they do, is an invaluable service that we can provide the community.
Absolutely. And of course, when by pre-planning and by talking it through first, you really do take a lot of stress out of the process when the actual event comes. Your loved ones aren't left with wondering why or wondering what to do.
Look, the amount of times that I've sat around a table with a family and the smallest of questions are very difficult to answer. It could be, that Mum or Dad had been married a couple of times, but do you know the details for the first wedding? And we need to be able to provide that information to the Registrar General, and that's the stuff that you can pre-organise and write down or find the documents for. The choice of burial or cremation, as I said earlier, or even entombment into a mausoleum, or what you'd really like done with your ashes.
That's right.
The people that you would like to invite, or maybe whether you want a public or private funeral service.
Right. Well, the people you don't want to invite.
Well, the people you don't want to invite, which is always difficult if it's a public service. But there's lots that you can really go through in pre-planning. What I'd recommend is that if any of the listeners are out there, we will provide you a copy of a free personal information guide, and you just need to call one of our funeral homes and we'll post that out to you. That's an invaluable resource because that not only gives you the details for the funeral, but it gives the family the details and location of everything from bank accounts to your insurance policies to your superannuation to all of those type of things that people are going to have to try and pull together at that time of a loss. And it steps you through, and you can write all that information down in this booklet and give it to one of your family or your executor.
And so important, isn't it? Because it's you're better off to ask the question beforehand rather than try and guess the answer after.
what we do is we plan for everything.
Yeah.
We plan for retirement, we plan for our weddings, we plan for the birth of our children.
Yeah.
The one inevitable thing in life which you're not going to avoid is passing away, but we tend to not plan as much for that.
No.
Although, in saying that, it has increased a lot.
Has it?
I would say we're getting close to around 20% of people now that are pre-arranging or pre-planning, or at least putting the information together for people or for their family, so as to not burden them at that particular point in time.
Indeed. Look, I think that's so important because, as I touched on before, at that time, once the person has passed, trying to pull that information together, it just adds to the stress and the grief, doesn't it?
And look, would you know, or any of the listeners know, where to find, mum's will or marriage certificates, birth certificates, father's names,
yes,
mother's maiden names,
yes,
all of those type of things.
Yeah, they're all needed, aren't they?
They're all required, because the Registrar General requires an accurate account of a person's life when they pass away, so that they can provide the correct statistics through to the government. They can provide the death certificate that's required to administer the estate effectively, and all of those type of things. It's a lot for people to be able to try and find and pull together. And when they sit down with us, they think it's going to be a 5-minute conversation. We want a burial, or we want it on Tuesday, and we want it at 10 a.m. Well, it's not that simple.
It goes on for much longer than that.
It can sometimes take 2 or 3 hours, depending on the complexity of the arrangements and the amount of things that we can provide now to be able to personalise a service needs to also be discussed. The things that you can have as optional things, have changed from the 15-minute service you used to have, quite a few years ago, to now the hour and a half service that really it takes to be able to incorporate and explain a person's life from beginning to middle to end.
Yes.
A little bit like a story, and have people walk away from that funeral service with a feeling that they really knew the person quite well, or to be reiterated about some of the achievements or the walk of life.
Yes,
as people have really gone through things, because it's a story everybody should have the chance to tell.
Indeed, because it'll be the last one, most definitely. And I guess as part of the planning, if somebody is planning their funeral, a lot of people may not know where they're going to pass. Now, they might pass at home. So do you help them sort of make the phone call? I mean, who do you call at the end of the day? What happens if you wake up one morning and someone's passed in the night?
Look, you can always call the funeral director and get the advice.
Yeah.
If it's a sudden death and you hadn't been sick for a while, obviously there's other parties that need to become involved.
Yeah.
Things like the police and the coroners, to be able to make sure that there's no suspicion around the death. But if you obviously had been sick for a while and you've been getting some care at home, and it's somewhat expected that you're going to pass away, the funeral director steps straight in. We speak with the doctors. We make sure that a nurse or someone's been there to be able to issue a certificate of life extinct, and then to be able to organise to be able to get them back into our care as soon as possible. And they're the things that people really want to know first.
Absolutely, yeah. My word, they do, because the last thing you need to be doing when you discover something like that is to be thinking, now, who do I talk to? I mean, it would be very daunting, I would think.
And that's why you need to be able to get advice from the right people to make sure that due process is followed, because as with everything, you need to be able to make sure that you're covering off the legal angle of what's required as well. And we need to be able to deal with doctors and the coroners and all the people that have been involved in the lead up to somebody passing.
Yes.
To be able to obtain that information that's then required, as I said before, by the Registrar General, but also by the cemetery boards, for us to be able to make application to them for things like cremation, which is so final. We need to deal with independent doctors who will look over the paperwork from the current doctor and make sure everything's okay and nothing suspicious, or that there's no implants that the person might have had, like a pacemaker and so forth, which obviously can explode in a cremator, and to be able to then give us authority at that point to be able to make application to the cemetery to take the person to the cemetery.
So there is a lot to do, and to try and do that as an individual without any experience at all, that would be just fraught with all sorts of problems and issues that would arise. So you really do need the advice of a really good funeral home, don't you?
You do. And while some people have tried it in the past to be able to
have they really?
to do it themselves, I would certainly not recommend it.
No.
You need that time to be able to obviously get yourself together and grieve as well. And
You do, and you don't want anything to impede that, because we've talked about that before, haven't we? It's so important, the grieving process.
It is, and it's also important where you don't have to rush a funeral to be able to give yourself a little bit of time. It's so that you also remember the funeral service, that you are in touch with the people that really matter, the people that should be there. Tell those stories, continue to tell the same stories sometimes, which is okay, and it's quite cathartic.
Yes.
But also to be able to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And we're running a little bit of a program, and about why funerals. Why funerals matter so much in a community like ours. And we really need to start to make sure that we educate the community that when somebody passes away, that we just don't turn our heads and not attend a funeral service or have a direct disposition at the cemetery, where no one attends, because it affects a lot of people when we do that.
Is that right?
It affects it might be the spouse, it could be the children, it could be the grandchildren, that have not had that opportunity to be able to say goodbye or have the person leave them.
Yeah.
And grief will find you. So whether it's today, tomorrow, 1 week, 1 year, it'll eventually catch up with you.
Yeah.
And you'll need to be able to have those thoughts in process to be able to help yourself deal with it.
Yeah, and that's so important, because people do think that they are immune from that and that they can deal with it, but the reality is that you can't.
You can't.
You
experienced it firsthand myself, obviously, being a funeral director all my life. When my father passed away, for instance, I put on the work hat and off you go. And then it's months down the track where you sit down and you reflect and you go, well, maybe that wasn't the best thing for me to do, is to have conducted my own father's funeral. And while I'm very proud that I had the opportunity to be able to do that, time still caught up. And time said, well, okay, Dad, you need to be able to just, sit down for a moment and have a bit of chance of reflection and think about your father.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And of course, just recently you've moving away from that. You've just recently opened a new funeral home in Subiaco. How's that going?
That's going very well. Beautiful facility. It's the reflection chapel that we have there is a multi-purpose chapel that we can use for community events as well as funeral services and those type of things. And it's very specific, and it's beautiful. We've been getting involved with the footy crowds, which has been really nice.
Right? How's that gone?
That's gone amazing, and the reception that we've had from the local community or people attending the football that'll go past, and we give them free bottles of water. Anzac Day, we passed out, 500 or so Australian flags.
Wow.
So you would have seen that at the football. Everybody had these big Australian flags that we gave everybody.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
I had my daughter out there passing out Anzac cookies. That's what I say. It's about being part of the community. And if you can do these things by putting things in front of people, what you do find is that you take away that stigmatism that death is all bad, or that funeral directors are taboo to be able to walk next to.
Yeah.
And we get really involved with the football crowd.
That's great.
And that's being local.
Yes.
We sponsor quite a lot of actual local football clubs. Yeah. And a lot of waffle football clubs, soccer clubs, all of those type of things, so that we've got that soft community angle. Yeah. And it's not just about our sponsorship, it's about some of the real great community initiatives that we do. The Lions Eye for Sight program and the collection of hearing aids and to give to third world countries and all of those type of things, which really make a difference to what we do and makes me proud of every day to go to work.
That's fantastic, Daniel. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been interesting as always, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again real soon.
Thanks very much, Murray.
More on the Sattler File shortly.
This is Sattler File.
A kiss, a long embrace, a fond farewell should be personal. That's why personal funerals allow you to remember the life of your loved ones in a way that truly reflects their individual character. It's the difference that makes every goodbye unique. For more information about planning a special goodbye, visit personalfunerals.com.au, because every goodbye is different.
This is the Sattler 5.